Dial of Destiny? Yeah, more like the dial of my disappointment being cranked up to 11. That was pretty bad, wasn't it? Kinda like this movie. Well, ladies and gents, I've seen the movie, and, well, I was bored. I kept looking at my watch, wondering how much longer it would be before I could leave. I'm sorry, but 2 hours and 30 minutes is just too long for a movie like that, especially when you've got so much stuff that was so unnecessary. Before I get too into it, I just want to say that I didn't absolutely hate this movie. I certainly didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. Will I ever watch it again? Probably not. The only thing I really liked about the movie, despite what was done to him, was Harrison Ford. The love I had for him as a 10 and 11-year-old is still there. He might be an old man now, but he's my beloved old man. He's worth getting to see on the big screen. But the movie itself? Boring. If you're watching this, you're probably here for spoilers, but if not, click off now. I'll start off strong because that's how the movie started. The best part of this entire thing was the very beginning with the flashback scene that had some actually decent de-aging of Harrison Ford. He still moved like an old man, so it was weird seeing a guy with a young face be a little hunched over and run like an 80-year-old would. But it's fine, I can get over that. Harrison Ford looks and sounds a heck of a lot better at 80 than Patrick Stewart does at 82. The first part felt like an Indiana Jones movie. And if the whole thing could have been that, it would have been 100% better. That being said, while I did actually like the beginning scene, it felt a little unnecessary and probably helped make the movie that much longer. But the beginning set up how Indy got his hands on the dial and how Voller, however you say his name, was involved, so I get why it was there. But the movie is too dang long. Most of the action scenes felt bloated and forced, like they didn't have enough story, but they needed something to keep the audience's attention. And what better way to do that than jump from action scene to action scene? One of the things I loved about the OG trilogy was the exploration and the actual sense of adventure they instilled. Both of those things felt like they were entirely lacking in this film. And the CGI, oh my God, it was bad and way too overused. So much of this movie was CGI and looked so fake that it was difficult for me to get into the action scenes. The chase scene through New York comes to mind, with Indy on horseback riding through the subway. When a live-action movie suddenly starts looking like a cartoon, with things that could only happen in a cartoon, it breaks the immersion and jars me out of the story. And here I thought CGI was supposed to make things cheaper, but whatever made this cost $300 million, then they deserved to lose the money just for the CGI. It was trash. And I think that's part of the problem with movies nowadays. With the bad story writing and the possible agendas being pushed aside, it's the fact that they're relying so heavily on CGI that nothing looks real anymore. We've gotten so far away from practical effects that nothing is believable and looks so incredibly fake. And the same goes for the music industry. So many people who can't actually sing or are just looking for an easy way out are using autotune. It cuts down on creativity immensely to the point where all you get are these soulless creations. That's why we're drawn to the way things used to be done because A, it's real, which makes it more believable, and B, a creative talent is behind it, making it a true work of art. It's one thing for a movie to be animated, but it's entirely different for something to be live action and made to look cartoony all for the sake of being cheaper. It does nothing but cheapen the movie, show, whatever, when it's relied on too heavily. And then, of course, there's my common complaint. Excuse me. The movie needed to be brighter. Stop making movies and TV shows that are too damn dark to see anything. Anyway, when I wasn't rolling my eyes at the over-the-top CGI scenes, I felt depressed. And I remember seeing articles right after it came out that people were leaving the theater depressed. And now I know why. That feeling didn't leave me afterwards either. The only thing I really felt was the need to rewatch Raiders again to feel some excitement and joy and see Indy in his prime. I don't like seeing him as a broken old man. There was no need for him to be that way. And I didn't like the constant jabs at his age. Like, yeah, he's 80, probably too old to be doing a movie like this, but I hate that his age is played as a joke and meant to belittle him. First, he's an old man asleep in a recliner in his underwear, obviously meant to be a dig at him and strip him down and make him vulnerable. As he's teaching his class, the last one before he retires, it's made very clear that his students don't want to be there and think he's boring, as if the only thing that made him popular years ago were his looks, which, sure, played a big part. But I wholeheartedly believe that Indy was a great teacher and inspired enthusiasm in his class because of that. But no, now he's just a shell. And then, of course, Helena keeps making digs at his age. Indy is a shadow of the man he used to be, of the man he should be. And it makes me angry that they did what they did in order to, what? Just like I said, to push him to the back and make Helena out to be the one who's so smart, the one who solves all the puzzles and can fight just as well as any man. She was a know-it-all, and not in an endearing way. And while we're here, let's talk about good old Helena Shaw. I did not like Helena. It felt like they were trying to make her a badass and a reflection of Indy, but she just came across as annoying and unlikable. I absolutely hated the scene where they're escaping the boat and she's laughing, while Indy has to point out to her that his friend was just murdered. Does she care? No. Do I believe the sincerity of her apology? No. Willie Scott, who annoyed me but I didn't hate, looks a whole lot better now. There was only a faint glimmer of a good person in Helena at the end. And even then, it was too little, too late. Helena proved that she was selfish and greedy time and time again, and that never freaking changed. The movie revolved around her for the most part. She was the driving force and pushed Indy into the side character role in his own movie. Anytime they got into a tight spot, it was because of her. Every time something happened because of her, I couldn't help but roll my eyes because here we go again. And for what? And she had absolutely zero qualms about putting Indy's life in danger and possibly getting him killed until the end when she rather abruptly had a change of heart. Meanwhile, Indy, being the good guy and hero he is, always went after her, always saved her. He should have just dropped her like a hot potato. Let her go on this adventure, because it all would have worked out the same. And I'm gonna be 100% honest, I didn't like Teddy's character. At all. But Teddy was just as overpowered as Helena was, to the point where it was unbelievable. Particularly the flying the plane bit at the end in a storm. I guess the one saving grace for him is that it set up that he was learning how to fly when we first met him. Same thing with the swimming bit in the Archimedes tomb. But he was miraculous, really. A true prodigy. But back to Indy, there's more I need to say, specifically about Mutt. In my Kingdom of the Crystal Skull video, I said I wasn't much of a fan of Mutt, but you know what? After how they handled his absence in this movie, I am on Team Mutt Williams 100% now too. To clarify, Indy tells Helena that he would go back in time to stop his son from going to fight in Vietnam because he would die, and because Indy could do nothing to console Marion, Marion would divorce him. So putting aside the fact that Indy sounds kinda selfish there, and that he doesn't want his son to die because Marion would leave him, I hated the reason they gave for Mutt going to fight. If Mutt needed to die, fine, but the part about him going to fight in a war just to piss off his father was wholly unnecessary. In fact, it could have been a whole lot more emotional if he had done it to maybe prove himself, or perhaps something more noble, and he died in that pursuit, and then both Indiana and Marion are grieving. But with the way Crystal Skull ended, Mutt doing that didn't make any sense to me. Sure, Mutt was rebellious, but at the end he seemed cool with his dad, but unless I missed it, we don't know why Mutt wanted to piss off his dad. And yes, Crystal Skull was better than this movie, even though I only really enjoyed the first movie the last time I watched it because of nostalgia reasons. At least I had fun watching it. Dial of Disappointment, however, I'll never watch again. And you know, I'm liking the alien angle Crystal Skull took more and more. For some reason, I feel like I can suspend my disbelief more for aliens than I could for time travel. I really can't explain it, but time travel was just pushing it too far. The Ark of the Covenant doing its thing? Fine. Ripping out hearts while people are still alive? Fine. The Holy Grail and a knight who's hundreds of years old? Totally fine. Aliens? Well, I believe in them, so fine. But time travel? You're pushing that a bit too far there, buddy. Overall, I didn't outright hate it, and there were certain parts I liked. Granted, I can name them all on one hand, so not great on the whole. But honestly, I was just flat out bored. It was too long, the plot was convoluted, and so much seemed unnecessary. But here are the parts I liked, aka the parts that felt like an Indiana Jones movie to me. The beginning flashback, The Archimedes tomb part and the Marion bit at the end, despite me hating how they handled all of that with her wanting to divorce him. Marion should have had a heck of a lot bigger part if you ask me. Overall, I'd give this movie a 4 out of 10. I wasn't invested in the story. It felt like there were absolutely no stakes because even if Indy hadn't been on the plane with the Nazis when they went back Archimedes' time, they still would have died. Voller would have still failed regardless. No one was asking for this movie. It didn't need to happen. So why did it? So Disney could milk those sweet, sweet dollars out of a long-standing IP because those are safer bets than any new IPs. But I've got to ask, with the price tag on this movie, was it worth it? Was having good old Kathleen Kennedy behind it worth ruining yet another beloved franchise that Disney got their grubby little hands on? Well, I'll leave that up to you to decide. But as for me, I'm definitely going back to watch Raiders again to cleanse my palate. I don't exactly regret seeing Dial of Disappointment, but I could have gone without it. I'm more disappointed that we didn't get a true Indiana Jones movie. But it's getting what it deserves at the box office, and at this point, that's all I can ask for. So that's all for my review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Dashed Hopes and Dreams. I hope you at least enjoyed this. I did. This was rather therapeutic. Anyway, I'll see you all next time with hopefully something more exciting and happy. But as always, this is Shlyn, signing out. I really needed that.